Hi guys, and welcome to the new episode of Rejection Chronicles, coming to you in these very strange times. It's hard not to talk about the pandemic, it's hard not to think about it, and I'll be honest with you, this whole vlog feels kind of silly in comparison in the context of what's happening outside of here. But I suppose we have to keep some semblance of normalcy or we will all just go insane. So I figured, why not just go back to the good old rejection, right? At least that never changes. I've been really lucky. I've been born in the 90s. It's after the fall of communism. I've never had to experience that. I've never had to fight for freedom. And most of us here, we've never had to experience war. I feel like ever since I've been born, ever since I've started to think about the world at all, I've had this growing conviction inside me that the societies we live in, the first world countries, they are paragons of stability. That even though we may have our ups and downs, we've left the huge, sudden disasters in the past. That we can be stricken by localized natural disaster, but nothing quite this scale. Nothing that will potentially change the fabric of our society. It feels so surreal to me. I just want to thank every doctor, every nurse and every researcher and everyone who's trying to contribute to our fight against this virus. And with that being said, let's move on to lighter topics. Let's talk about some agents who slapped me with a nice form rejection or just ignored me or whatever. The good same old that we kinda really need right now. So as you already know, The New Amazing Nightmare was the story that came to me organically, the vomit of my imagination, something that poured out of me and just came to be. We know it didn't go quite well. How it went exactly? Well, after the Indiegogo campaign was over, I hired the editor and I had 2 months to prepare all the prizes, make everything ready for send out, and then 2 months afterwards, something like that, I got the book text back. I could finally print the hardcovers and then pack it all up and send it out to my supporters. And then I put the ebook version online. It drowned in the sea of books just like that. I didn't quite know what I could do about it. And then I came up with one idea. That idea was to send the book to book bloggers. I have started to browse through them, see which ones of them are interested in fantasy books, which ones of them review self-published books. I gathered all of them in my Firefox tabs, and then I wrote some pitches and started to send them out. And nothing happened. Not a single one of them responded to me, not a single one of them reviewed the book, but this time I don't think it was because the pitch was bad, or the book was bad, or the idea, whatever, any sort of the factor like that. I think it was because a ton of other authors got the exact same idea. And I'll be honest with you, I do not blame the authors of those blogs for ignoring most of us, because I think honestly most of them were just teenage girls who were like, oh, I'm going to have a book blog, it's going to be so fun. And then suddenly their inbox is just filled with self-published novels and they're like, help me. One of the reasons why I think so is because I had a blog when I was younger and I know that it takes quite some effort and I wasn't even reviewing things, so I was just writing things and I also flaked out of it. And because about a year afterwards, something like that, I have decided to browse through those blogs once more and see if anyone maybe wrote some note about the book and just didn't tell me, whatever. I was just procrastinating probably, so I just found all those tabs and started to go through them, and most of those blogs were gone. Straight up gone or just inactive for 8 months, 9 months, something like that, so, it was not the best idea. If you ever self-publish your book, don't count on bloggers. It might be a nice bonus, but I think before you have a name, they won't really give you a time of day, and it's no wonder, unless you maybe write a book that's just extremely fits with what they want to read, but I think most of them will still focus on trade published books, if only because there is some kind of selection there and there is just less of them. So, to sum up this whole self-publishing misadventure of mine, there is one lesson to be learned here. If you feel that talking yourself up or talking your writing up makes you obnoxious at best and a liar at worst, because deep down you don't believe in anything you do or create, and you feel that you should be paying people to read your book because it's not like you're delivering an entertainment product that people normally pay for and want to have and enjoy, don't self-publish your book. Just don't. Try to get trade published, because that is the only way for you. Spare yourself all of this grief. So, since I've learned I am a hopeless case when it comes to any sort of advertising, like negative skill in it, I realized I have to write something that will be trade published. And maybe if I publish a book and have some kind of name, or at least I can call myself a writer, then maybe I will be able to do something with the new Amazing Nightmare. For now, I had to put it on hiatus, and it sucked, and it still sucks, because it is still on that hiatus, and it's been there for several years now. Why? Well, you're gonna find out very soon. So in the previous episodes, I've identified the main pitfalls that I had when trying to pitch the new Amazing Nightmare to anyone. It was too long, it was not standalone, and it was really hard to write a query for it. So obviously, if I wanted to focus on writing a book that I could pitch efficiently, I had to do something about those three parts. So I started to think of another idea. The problem was, I was still me, and I have a tendency to overcomplicate things. I love overcomplicating things, making them metaphorical and kind of strange and kind of, cheeky when it comes to breaking some tropes and fighting cliches and whatever. I just find a lot of fun in it. I find way too much fun in sitting on TV Tropes website, because it's so great. Love it. If you've never been there, go there. It's awesome. I will try to put a link in the description, by the way, but be careful. You might just find yourself like 2 days in the future suddenly after you've opened it. It happened to me before. So the idea I've come up with for my next project was a book of fairy tales for adults. Not adult fairy tales for adults. And of course, it had to have a twist to it, so I thought it would have the basic text in the middle, in the black font, and then there would be bad or bittersweet endings on one side, and good endings on the other side, one with the blue font and one with the red font. I even had covers made for it, because I like to think about projects when I'm doing covers, and yes, I have used my Mac for it because, well, it's accessible and we don't have any copyright issues with one another. We got a good thing going there, so yeah. It was pretty fun making the covers, and it was also enough time to realize I was being an idiot. Because who the hell reads fairy tales as an adult nowadays? I mean, certainly there are some people who like it, but it's a small niche. It's a small group of people who might have enjoyed this kind of project, but it was not what I was aiming for. I was wanting to do something that would be an easy sell. And selling a book of fairy tales with good and bad endings, it's complicated even in the visual design of it to begin with. That is not an easy sell. It would probably be just horrific. And I have realized that in time. Phew. By the time I've realized what a silly idea it was, I had about 15 or 20 fairy tales drafted. Not written, just, very short drafts, just main motives and atmosphere, whatever. And I actually thought I would take those bits and try to combine them into a story. It turned out to be a lot of fun. I seem to recall one of the fairy tales was about an angel with stone wings. There was something about a broken mirror hiding some dark secret. There was something about pandas, very unhappy pandas. Something about dandelions, about bird people that were sewing their wings on very, very different kinds of things. A painter lady that was painting death. And I just took a lot of those little motifs and I started to turn them into an urban fantasy novel. And that's how my next book, Because Death Wanted Frozen Butterflies, came to be. And I'll be honest with you, I still really like the title. I think it's kind of cute and cheeky in the context of the novel. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. Before this book, I've always been writing hot fantasy. Even though the new Amazing Nightmare is like on this fantasy front, it was still a secondary world and there are different races and all of that. Because Death Wanted Frozen Butterflies is actually set on Earth. Mostly. It also takes place in the atheist afterlife possibility realm kind of thing. It is me, okay? I had to complicate it at least a little bit and make it a little bit metaphorical and stuff. And I actually, even though I've taken most of the fairy tales and just used some motifs out of them, it does actually contain a few fairy tales from the collection that never came to be that are weaved into the narrative. And personally, I really like this motif. I really like how I have connected them into the narrative of the story, how it all just comes together and all of that. But guess what? That's not easy to query. But before we get to the querying, let's talk about some things that I think I did, I wouldn't say right, but at least according to plan. First of all, the book is actually standalone with a series potential. So the best thing it can be when it comes to writing this little snippet in the query. You can take the one thing and if it sells great, I can write another one. Great. The next came the question of my protagonist. And the book I have had in my mind, the general idea, is a very heartwarming story that's rather light, that has some of those fairy tales. And I figured the target is definitely women. Of course, any guy is welcome to read it, most welcome, but you always have this general idea of who the main target audience will be. And so I figured the best protagonist for this kind of novel will be a young girl. It is not a young adult book. She's not a teenager, she's not 16 or anything like that, she's 19. She is adult in a way, but young. It just fit, okay? Her name is Nira, and she has a backstory based on one of the fairy tale drafts. So the spirit of the initial idea is still very much alive in this one. And then, what's the next thing that's easy to pitch, that elevates your query, and that's just a great marketing hook for the agent? Something that's really easy to sell. It's romance. Of course it's romance. So I thought, let's add some romance into the fray. And honestly, I like the way I've done it. I like the way I've gone about it. And then one of my friends, who always reads my books, by the way, thank you very much, Damian, I much appreciate it, he hated it. He gave it big fat thumbs down. And the funniest part for me is that he didn't diss any part of it that I could be like, yeah, that could be fixed, yeah, I'm not sure about it. No, no, no. He hated the part that I liked the most. He hated the part that I thought was the substance of it, that just, the very essence of the relationship between these characters, and the most pivotal point in it, that just turned... He hated the best part. And, well, I still think it was nice. So either we just have very varying tastes in that, or I'm weird and the romance is weird. Who knows? Either way, the romance was there, and the part that we disagreed about wouldn't be in the query anyway, so whatever for now. I still needed something that would make it even better, even easier to sell. So I was like, what should be the next element? And I was like, right, the world. The world must be in danger. And I found a way to put the word in danger. Yes, it is not as simple as it could be, because it's me still, so it's kind of like metaphorical danger, but it's still kind of immediate enough. And if the main character doesn't do good things, bad things will happen, so, it fits, right? It's in danger. Very much so. Everything was going pretty great in the planning stage, right? Yeah, the fairy tale part was a bit tricky to query, but that could be worked around. And then I wrote a fucking long book. I wish I was joking. I'm not. It came out almost as long as New Amazing Nightmare, Symmetry of Sins, book 1, whatever. Like twice as long as it was supposed to be, because I just got carried away again. I got into the story, I started feeling it, it started living in my head, it became the Soul Dough 2 Electric Boogaloo, And it turned out to be a bitch to query. But by the time I was done writing this book, it actually became pretty important to me in a different way than the New Amazing Nightmare was, because this one was kind of closer to the real life. And while I wouldn't say it's philosophical, it's not. There are very slight elements of some kind of, existential ponderings, stuff like that, and just the general idea of the world and the crisis and the book, right? I don't want to really spoil much right now. It was writing it all down and just taking the time to organize my thoughts and put them on paper. It was a little bit cathartic to me, in a way. I have spent a lot of time in my youth, in my teenage years, thinking over life, existence, all of those things. To the point I was getting kind of looped on some unnerving thoughts like lack of existence, take what every emo teenager might be going through, add to it a lot long hours of actually getting deep into it and convincing your own self that those things might actually be, and if nothing is real, how can you live, all those kinds of things. And it took me quite a while before I got to some... Oh my goodness, what is my cat fur doing here? There are no cats here. And yet they are. Seriously, I'm trying to get deep here for a second, but the cats are sabotaging me. Anyway, so it took me quite a while to kind of chew through all of that. Chew maybe too. And I have managed to do it. I have never accepted anyone's idea of what life is, what you believe in, what you don't believe in. I had to kind of reach my peace on my own, and I have done it. And I haven't really thought much about those things since, because I was just at peace. I still am, by the way. But writing this book, I was confronting those thoughts a little bit, kind of straightening them up. The book isn't based on my belief system, nothing like that. I don't believe in the things that are there in the religious sense, but it's kind of exploring a possibility, a kind of a fantasy, philosophical fantasy kind of thing, with a little bit of those thoughts and those experiences I've gone through in my past. So it's nothing super complicated, it's nothing super deep. I am not a philosopher, and I have pretty much finished being a wannabe philosopher when I was really young, so there is nothing extremely profound in there, but those are still things that mattered a lot to me. So while they are very limited in the book, because I didn't want to, start writing treatise on bullshit inside the book, to me, all of it carried more weight. So obviously I got pretty attached to this book. I still am pretty attached to this book. It still means a lot to me. And what that meant, I had to try, right? Even though I knew that I would have trouble writing the query and trying to query agents with this way too long book, I've decided to properly go for it this time. Well, since I'm talking about it on Rejection Chronicles, you may already know it didn't work out. I don't think the length was the biggest problem. I've sent queries to, I think, like 40 agents, maybe 50 agents over time, and I honestly don't think that not a single one of them would overlook the length if they loved the query. So I can't really blame it on that, because the book was standalone, so the biggest obstacle was gone. I think it's quite difficult to query this book despite my efforts in the planning phase, because on one hand it's a heartwarming Christmas time story. On the other hand, it deals with suicide, and it also has very slight religious undertones. Even though the general message of this book is that of empathy, unity, of finding your way back to wanting to live, I think just the mention of suicide as one of the important topics in the book might have turned a lot of agents off. I mean, the word is actually banned on YouTube, along with many other words that should not be banned on YouTube. I mean, sorry for another digression, but I was trying to listen to some videos recently, and it's getting ridiculous. People are either adding a ton of beeps, or they are just cutting out words and just putting them on screen. You can't listen to those videos anymore, and I don't know what's happening. I mean, just slap like for adults on the video and let people talk about important subjects. It's not that they are censoring offensive words, slurs or anything. They are actually censoring any word that's in any way controversial. That's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely infantilizing our entire culture on YouTube, and it's making me angry. Okay, it's totally gutting a lot of creators that I used to listen to that were actually talking about important subjects in intelligent manner, and now they are just like, and I thought that shouldn't be, and then, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, there is a very popular Netflix series right now called The 13 Reasons Why, and I haven't watched it, but I have heard a lot about it because a lot of people are pretty angry about it, because apparently it kind of romanticizes suicide, which can be, I don't like to use the word problematic, but when it comes to media directed at very vulnerable audience, which is teenagers in their puberty, going through a ton of problems and hormonal changes and all, I can see how that could be actually harmful. And yet it's very popular and a lot of people love it. Compared to that, the way I treat the subject in my book is extremely vanilla. It's the most societally approved way, the message that is basically don't. You can find a way out of it, right? Because that's what I wanted this book to be. I wanted to be an uplifting, heartwarming story that does start kind of depressing, but gets better. And I really just, as I was writing it, I wanted it to be something positive, something someone could read and just feel better, if only for a moment. I think mental health is extremely important, and so I have touched on it in several parts of the book. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like some agents might be afraid of this kind of topic from an unknown author, that it might be a difficult thing to sell to a publisher. Maybe the publisher would be afraid that people wouldn't want to read about stuff like that. But I hope it's not the case. Honestly, I hope they just looked at it and were like, yeah, no, that part sounds very boring or sounds cliche or it's too long. I hope those were the reasons. Because if they rejected this book because it touched on difficult subjects, then that really sucks. I don't mind somebody liking it in general and telling me that this has to be deeper, this needs more research, whatever. It's all to fix, or they just say, I don't like the way you went about it, but at least don't reject it because I wrote about it, okay? That's not what books are for. That's not what they are supposed to be for. But maybe they just hated the fairy tales. I mean, I could hope so. They were just like, what is fairy tales? Get this out of here, right? Honestly, the first batch of queries I have sent for this book, and it was like 10 of them, they were not very good. I can really see those poor interns being like, what is that? They were pretty rancid. I was just learning to write the queries, and yeah, I think I just sent 10 of them, like 5 of one batch, and then I tried to fix it and I sent 5 more. Not great. And then after a while, a year later, I have started to send them again. I have written new queries that were much better, trust me. They weren't great apparently because nobody bid, but they were much better. I even wrote two kinds of them. One was more focused on those, metaphysical little bit angle kind of thing. The other one didn't mention it at all, and it was focused more on the action and the light-hearted adventure kind of part of it. And I was trying to guess which agent might like which one more, and I was sending like one time this, one time that, and it didn't work. And they might have also hated the sample. Though if that was the case, that would mean both the sample and the query sucked, because most agents didn't want samples at start, they just sent the query. So if those that got the sample got through the query and then hated the sample, well, shit. But if they did, I would kind of guess why. It does start a little slow. I had a beginning for this book that was right into the action, but it just didn't land for me. I think this kind of scene, so that it actually carries some emotional weight, it needs a little bit of introduction first. And it's not the character going to the fridge and making the breakfast and then going to school or anything like that. No, nothing like that. It's kind of, well, I wouldn't say poetic, but it's the closest word I could use to describe it, even though it's not the kind of poetic quality. It's just, But it does have this moment where it just builds up to the action. And I know that nowadays it's a little bit frowned upon, because everybody says that you have to just go right into it. The first sentence has got to be the boots hitting the mud, and you're just in the action. I don't think it works for every single story. I am sorry. I know that this might be a heresy to say, because and people would say, oh, well, that's why you can't make it, but I just don't agree. Some stories do need an introduction. They need a moment of peace before the storm. You know, I might actually read this opening part here on the channel one time, if there's any interest in it. I could just read the prologue and I could read chapter 1 and let you see what you think. Is it too slow? Is it boring? Is it unconvincing? Is it badly written? I don't know. It's really hard for me to say. So I might just do that. I don't know. But after the first round of queries, those rancid ones, my flight instinct actually activated. And I had an intermediate idea between sending the queries once and sending them a year after, or 2 years after. Oh my goodness, the time flies. Either way, I thought I would do something else with it. A series on YouTube, where I would read, the book is actually 24 chapters, and I was like, I'm going to make it like those advent calendars, you know, where you open the windows every day and pick out the chocolate that you eat. I loved those as a kid so much. Either way, I thought I would read all the chapters separately, make a small, very, you know, simple animation for each, like draft a scene and then make it appear bit by bit as the chapter goes on. And I will post them on YouTube, one every day in December. And I was like, that's a really cool idea. And I almost got to it. I even made the introductory song, the song you can find on the channel. I figured I would make some, you know, little animated intro, and it was supposed to be the whole thing. Luckily, again, I managed to stop myself before I committed to something like that, because that would be a project for like half a year. Reading the book, that's one thing, but making all of those animations, that would take me so long. And I was like, I cannot afford to do that. I don't have time to do that. I was here trying to move my career forward, and sure, I will go and spend half a year working on this project. And then what? I'm still me. You think I would promote it? You think I'd be able to go somewhere and say, look what a cool thing I've done? I'd be like, nah, the animation is not great. And the reading, people won't understand what I'm saying. And the book, well, it's not edited, and I would be wasting people's time. And you know, that's how it would go. And then it would be viewed by 5 people. And I would be like half a year down the drain. Because it's not like I really love drawing such things or animating such things. It wouldn't be like a leisure project for me. It would be me actually just trying to do something that could push the career forward, which it wouldn't do. It would be repeat of my failures with promoting the New Amazing Nightmare, even though this whole book started as a way to promote my name so that I could actually get New Amazing Nightmare off the ground. So yeah, I stopped myself. I went on with some other projects that I will be talking in the future about here. And then like a year ago, I've sent the newer batch of good queries out to get a few more rejections. But you know what? I'm actually waiting for one more rejection for this book. And this one will be special, because this one will come with snail mail. Yes, I have sent this book to one publishing house. Not an agent, a publisher. And they take forever to respond, and they actually required paper copy, and they will send a paper copy rejection, or they will not, because I could not get international reply coupons or anything like that here in Poland, so maybe they will just ignore me and I will never get it. But they said you can try to send it. So I did attach the envelope, the self-addressed envelope. It wasn't stamped. So if I do get it, and I should be getting it sometime this summer, unless things change too much due to the current circumstances. And if I'm still doing this vlog, I will be able to actually show you a proper, hard paper existence, tangible, you know, physical, corporeal rejection. Cool, right? Anyway, I actually kind of wanted to talk about queries for this book in the next episode, read those I've written, the rancid ones and the better ones, but the queries are not exactly like the blurb of the book at the back cover. They are filled with spoilers, and I might put it online someday, just there unedited, nothing. I will not be making another crowdfunding ever, not for my writing anyway. I kinda don't want to spoil it. So, and I also don't think anyone here really cares about how to write a query, right? And if you do, well, you can ask me about the process and stuff, but if you want actual advice, I suppose you should go ask somebody who succeeded in it. Unless you want to learn about how to fail to write a good query, then I'm your girl. Ask me in the comments. So, yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed, hope it took your mind off the world for a moment, and I'll see you next time, maybe soonish. I mean, we're all sitting at home anyway, right? Might as well ramble a bit. So yeah, have a good one.